Friends, let me begin by saying this. The moment you awaken spiritually, life as you once knew it begins to transform in the most mysterious and beautiful way. The same streets, the same people, the same sun that rises every morning, all seem different because you have changed. You no longer live as a victim of circumstance. You begin to see yourself as the very cause of the world you experience. The fog of separation lifts, and you come to know that reality is not something outside pressing upon you, but a living mirror reflecting your state of consciousness. You see that every event, every face, every opportunity, and even every disappointment was born first within the depths of your imagination. You begin to understand that this world is consciousness objectified, a divine dream in which your inner life takes form. And from that moment forward, you walk differently. You move through the world with a calm assurance, a quiet knowing that the unawakened cannot grasp. The spiritually awake live in the same world, yet in an entirely different dimension of awareness. Awakening, dear friends, is not a badge to be displayed upon the chest, nor a title to boast of before others. It is not a proclamation to the world that you are special or chosen. No, awakening is a private revolution, a sacred uprising within the soul itself. It is the moment when you discover that imagination, the inner world of thought and feeling, is the source of all creation. You begin to perceive that nothing happens by chance, for consciousness precedes every experience. Yet with this divine realization comes a profound responsibility. You realize that the same power that can lift you to heaven can also cast you into despair, depending on how it is used. And so, the awakened tread carefully, speaking less, observing more, knowing that not every ear is ready to hear the truth. They guard their revelations as a gardener guards tender seedlings, because some truths must take root in silence before they can bloom in understanding. The spiritually awake choose discretion, not secrecy, reverence, not fear, for they know that wisdom must mature quietly before it is shared. You see, to the unawakened mind, reality appears fixed, as if carved from stone, shaped by facts, conditions, and external powers. But to the awakened, reality is liquid light, ever-flowing, ever-changing, responding faithfully to the rhythm of thought and emotion. The spiritually awake understand that the invisible conversation within the mind is the true architect of experience. Every inner dialogue, every image you hold, every feeling you sustain, molds the outer world like clay in the hands of an unseen artist. And so they learn to guard the gates of their mind, not out of fear of contamination, but out of holy reverence for their creative nature. They understand that careless words are seeds scattered upon fertile soil, and every thought spoken aloud carries within it the power to multiply. Thus they speak less and imagine more. They turn their energy inward, knowing that silence often says more than sound, and that the most powerful declarations are made not with the lips, but within the heart that feels the truth of its own vision. The first thing the spiritually awake never share with anyone is their vision before it is manifested. When the awakened soul has seen something clearly in imagination, truly seen it and felt it as already real, it becomes a living reality in the unseen. The invisible has already accepted it. The process of birth has begun. But to speak of it prematurely is to invite interference from minds still ruled by doubt and disbelief. Just as a mother protects her unborn child from the harsh winds of the world, the awakened protect their inner creations from the cold breath of skepticism. Every vision conceived in imagination is a spiritual embryo requiring warmth, stillness, and faith to grow strong enough for manifestation. And so they remain quiet, nurturing the feeling of the wish fulfilled in the solitude of their own hearts. For the moment you speak of your dream to those who cannot yet believe, you risk planting your seed in barren soil. Protect your inner vision as sacred, for once it matures, The world will see it without your having to announce it. How often, my friends, have people spoken of their dreams only to watch them wither under the glare of disbelief? It was not that the dream lacked divine potency. No, every dream conceived in imagination carries within it the power of God Himself. But by sharing it too early, by exposing it to those whose hearts cannot yet perceive the unseen, the dream becomes contaminated by the vibration of doubt. The awakened know that belief is the atmosphere in which creation breathes. Without belief, even the greatest vision struggles to take form. Therefore, they hold their dreams close in the sanctity of silence. They tend to them daily with faith and thanksgiving, knowing that every unseen reality needs stillness to solidify. The spiritually awake keep their vision private, not from arrogance or secrecy, but from sacred love. Love for the delicate process by which the invisible becomes visible. They trust that the world will behold the fruit in due time, without their ever needing to defend or explain the seed. The second thing the spiritually awake never share is their inner battles. Awakening, contrary to popular belief, does not exempt one from the human struggle. It deepens it. The more aware you become, the more life begins to mirror your remaining shadows, inviting them to be healed. Old fears resurface, forgotten wounds call for reconciliation. It may feel as though the universe is testing you, but in truth, you are testing yourself, bringing every fragment of your being into alignment with your highest vision. The awakened understand that these struggles are not punishments, they are purifications. And so, they do not cry out for pity or gather audiences for their pain. They go within to that secret chamber where God and man are one, and there they commune with the divine in silence. They affirm, they forgive, they imagine peace until the storm dissolves into calm. They emerge stronger, purified, radiant with new understanding. For every inner conflict mastered becomes a gate through which divine power flows freely. They do not run to others seeking validation or sympathy, for they know that to speak constantly of their battles would only fortify the very conditions they wish to overcome. Every complaint is a renewed agreement with limitation. The awakened one understands this, and so chooses quiet transformation over noisy resistance. They wrestle with angels in the solitude of their own consciousness until dawn breaks within them, and when they rise, the world finds them shining, not knowing the nights of prayer, the tears of surrender, or the inner crucifixions that gave birth to their peace. This is why the awakened appear serene. Their calm is not the absence of storms, but the mastery of stillness amidst them. Their victories are not won in crowds, but in consciousness. They have learned that every battle is internal, fought not with swords, but with assumptions. And when they finally overcome, they do not boast, for they know that all triumphs belong to the God within who imagined them victorious long before the world saw proof. Third thing the spiritually awake never share is the exact method by which they manifest their desires. For the awakened soul knows that methods are merely garments, temporary forms through which the law of consciousness expresses itself. What works for one may not work for another, because creation is a personal act tailored to the rhythm and belief of the individual. When one truly understands the law of assumption, that whatever you assume to be true with feeling must externalize itself, you realize that there is no single formula. The technique itself is not the power, it is the state that gives birth to results. The awakened understand that to reveal every detail of their practice to the unprepared mind often leads to misunderstanding. People may imitate the form while missing the spirit, and so the truth becomes diluted. The spiritually awake, therefore, demonstrate by living example. Their success is their teaching, their peace is their sermon, and their results are their silent testimony that imagination creates reality. Consider this, my friends. If I tell someone to imagine themselves already possessing what they desire, they may close their eyes and go through the motions, but without the inner conviction, it is but an empty act. The act itself holds no magic. It is the feeling behind the act that moves mountains. Many try to follow the steps, but remain unchanged because they approach imagination as a ritual rather than as the living power of God within them. The awakened one knows that no outer technique can replace the inner state of knowing. You could repeat affirmations endlessly, but if you do so from a place of doubt, you only affirm the absence of what you seek. Thus, those truly awake refrain from detailed instruction. They know words can only point. They cannot transfer consciousness. True manifestation cannot be memorized, it must be realized. It is something you become, not something you perform. So they teach quietly, by embodying what they believe, until others see the law demonstrated through their very existence. The fourth thing the spiritually awake never share is their moments of divine encounter. Those sacred experiences when the veil between the visible and invisible grows thin, and one touches eternity. These moments cannot be explained without diminishing them, for words are too crude to capture the delicacy of divine revelation. When consciousness expands and the infinite reveals itself, time seems to dissolve, and you stand face to face with the essence of all life. No sound, no image, no language can translate that experience. It is as though the whole universe inhales within you, and for one timeless instant, you remember who you truly are, not flesh and bone, but pure awareness. The awakened one treasures these encounters in silence, for they know that to share them with those who have not yet tasted such awareness invites disbelief or distortion. These revelations are seeds of divine wisdom meant to grow within, not trophies to display. Their power lies in integration, not in explanation. How can you explain light to one who has never seen it? How can you describe music to one who has never heard? Likewise, the awakened one knows that the language of divine revelation cannot be spoken to unawakened minds. You can only become the light, and in your presence others may feel its warmth and seek its source. God reveals himself uniquely to each soul. Therefore, what you experience in your inner world is yours alone. It was tailor-made by the infinite to awaken your specific path of remembrance. To speak too soon of these things is to expose the sacred to misunderstanding and mockery. It is not pride that keeps the awakened silent, but wisdom. They know that what was shown to them was not meant for the intellect to analyze, but for the heart to embody. In stillness, they guard the revelation until it bears fruit in their being. Then, without words, their life becomes the very proof of the encounter. The fifth, and perhaps the most important thing the spiritually awake never share, is their level of consciousness. True awakening does not come with labels, rankings, or spiritual status. It unfolds silently, layer by layer, as consciousness expands to include more of God's infinite nature. Some awaken to the law of mind, realizing that thought creates reality. Others awaken to the awareness of being, perceiving that they are not merely thinkers, but the very consciousness in which all thought arises. And a few awaken even deeper, realizing that there is only God, expressing as all things, all people, all experiences. Yet the awakened do not boast of this realization, nor do they parade their enlightenment before others. For to proclaim oneself enlightened is to return to the illusion of separation. The truly awake understand that spiritual superiority is the last temptation of the ego. To know God is to recognize divinity in everyone, even in those who appear lost. Thus they walk humbly, radiant with quiet power, without the need for recognition. True awakening, my friends, is the essence of humility. It is a recognition that the great I Am which speaks within you is the same I Am that animates all life. You no longer see yourself as a person trying to reach God. You realize you have never been separate from Him. The awakened one knows that to love God truly is to love His expression in every being. They look upon the beggar and the king, the friend and the foe, and see only one life wearing many masks. They understand that judgment belongs to ignorance, and compassion is the fruit of understanding. Therefore, they walk through the world gently, not demanding acknowledgement, but giving it. They smile more, they forgive quicker, they listen deeper. In their silence, others feel comforted without knowing why. The awakened have become transparent to the divine light. It shines through them naturally. They need no halo, no title, no robe of distinction, for their presence itself reveals the truth they live. And so, the spiritually awake live in two worlds simultaneously, the visible and the invisible. Outwardly, they appear as ordinary people. They work, eat, laugh, and rest like everyone else. But inwardly, they move in a realm of pure creation, where thought becomes form and faith governs reality. They are not disturbed by appearances, for they know appearances are echoes of past assumptions. When life presents adversity, they do not react in panic. They withdraw inwardly and reimagine the scene from the state of victory. Their world bends in response to their inner stillness. They have discovered that peace is not the absence of storms, but the mastery of them. Like the calm sea beneath the waves, they remain unmoved even as outer conditions shift. To live awakened is to know that nothing is permanent except consciousness itself. Every event, every relationship, every challenge is clay, to be shaped by the inner artist. They live from within outward, the true direction of creation. People often ask Neville, if imagination truly creates reality, why not prove it to the world? And I tell them, my proof is my life. For truth needs no advertisement, it reveals itself in demonstration. The awakened do not argue with doubters because they know that belief cannot be forced upon another. Each soul awakens in its own season. The skeptic seeks proof before belief, while the awakened understand that belief itself is the proof. You no longer feel the need to defend what you have experienced. You simply live it, and life confirms it. The fruits of consciousness cannot be hidden. They ripen quietly for all who have eyes to see. The awakened one moves through the world without resistance, allowing results to speak louder than explanations. You see, the doubter convinces himself of his own limitation, while the awakened convince no one. They simply embody truth until it becomes visible. Faith, when lived sincerely, becomes its own undeniable evidence. Spiritually awake also understand that energy follows attention. Wherever attention goes, energy flows, and whatever one gives energy to grows. The awakened soul knows that the spoken word is not idle vibration, but living power, the instrument through which unseen ideas are clothed in form. To talk about what you dislike is to give it life. To dwell upon fear is to invite its shadow to linger. Thus, the spiritually awake choose their words as an artist chooses colors, carefully, purposefully, reverently. They refuse to gossip, to complain, or to describe themselves as victims, for every declaration is a command to the subconscious mind. Their silence is not aloofness, it is mastery. They understand that silence is not emptiness but containment, the gathering of creative energy into a point of power. They know that what they do not speak about, they release, and what they continually discuss, they keep alive. Therefore, they guard their conversations, for speech, like imagination, is the channel through which consciousness expresses. What they think and feel becomes the architecture of tomorrow's world. There is a beautiful scripture that says, "Be still and know that I am God." Yet most read these words and imagine a command for physical quietness alone. But the stillness spoken of is not merely the absence of sound, it is the quieting of the minds, turbulence, the cessation of inner argument. It is the moment when thought stops chasing appearances and rests in the assurance that all things are working together for good. In that stillness, one no longer tries to make things happen. One allows the divine order to unfold from within. The awakened understand that this sacred stillness is the birthplace of miracles. When you become still inwardly, the noise of the world loses its hold over you. The outer world begins to conform to the inner conviction of peace. The spiritually awake live from this state of quiet power. They move calmly through chaos, knowing that the storm outside cannot touch the calm within. It is here, in this divine stillness, that one meets God face to face, not in words but in knowing. You see, faith is not wishful thinking or desperate hoping. Faith is the unshakable conviction that what you have imagined already is. It is the still assurance that the invisible has already taken form and simply awaits its appointed hour to appear. The awakened do not pray as beggars appealing to a distant deity. They pray as creators aligning with the state of fulfillment. They understand that every answered prayer begins first as a state of consciousness, a feeling accepted as real. They do not struggle to force results, for they know that assumption, sustained with feeling, automatically externalizes itself. Faith is not effort, it is rest. It is resting in the awareness that all things are finished in the mind of God. The awakened do not look for signs. They feel the sign within themselves. They know that to believe is to create. And once that belief becomes natural, once the inner tone of certainty replaces the vibration of doubt, then the invisible hand of law brings forth the visible miracle without strain. That is why the spiritually awake speak less and imagine more. They no longer debate about God, they embody God. They no longer argue about truth, they live it. To them, imagination is not a fanciful escape, but the divine workshop of creation itself. The awakened understand that the world is not a problem to be solved, but an image to be rearranged in consciousness. They spend less time reacting and more time assuming the feeling of what they desire to see. They do not seek to convert others through persuasion. They allow their lives to become living demonstrations of the law. Their health, their peace, their quiet confidence, these speak louder than sermons. While the unawakened talk endlessly about the world's condition, the awakened quietly reshape it through the inner act of imagining lovingly. To them, creation is a sacred partnership between thought and faith. They know that every transformation begins first in silence, and that the inner vision, once felt as real, inevitably calls the outer world to rearrange itself in harmony. In time, you too will discover that silence becomes your greatest teacher. The less you attempt to explain yourself, the more your life itself begins to speak for you. The less you crave validation, the more your manifestations flow effortlessly. You will realize that truth never needs to defend itself. It stands eternal, unthreatened by misunderstanding. When you cease to announce every seed you've planted, you allow the divine gardener within to bring forth the harvest in its own time. The spiritually awake understand that not all soil can nurture every seed. Some truths must remain buried within the secret garden of the soul, watered by faith and warmed by gratitude, until they bloom naturally into visible form. They no longer argue, they no longer justify, they simply create. Their restraint is not secrecy, but sacred timing. They know that the universe has perfect order, and that all things once imagined in love must reveal themselves in the appointed season. Silence, then, becomes their greatest act of trust. So, my friends, to live awake is to live wisely, not in fear, but in divine understanding. Protect your visions as you would protect a newborn flame from the wind. Guard your energy as though it were sacred currency, for indeed it is the wealth of consciousness. Honor your divine experiences, for they are messages written upon your soul by God Himself. Speak less and imagine more. Love with depth, but discern with wisdom. For everything that unfolds in your life, every victory, every delay, every seeming obstacle, is but the mirror of your inner state. Life does not happen to you, It happens through you. When you change the inner vibration, the outer conditions must shift to match it. The awakened know that this is the eternal law of being. Consciousness is the only reality. Therefore, they no longer blame, resist, or fear. They rise each day with quiet faith, knowing that their world is but the shadow of their inner light, and that within them rests the key to all transformation. And when you finally grasp this, when it becomes more than words, when it becomes the living rhythm of your being, you will walk in quiet power. You will cease striving to convince others, for you will know. You will no longer argue with appearances, for you will feel the deeper truth beneath them. You will radiate peace that cannot be shaken, love that cannot be measured, and confidence that cannot be faked. The spiritually awake share little because they live much. They do not preach the light, they are the light. Their life becomes their sermon, their silence their song, their presence their message. And that, my friends, is the greatest secret of all, that heaven is not a distant realm, but a state of consciousness available here and now. When you dwell in the awareness of I am, you realize that all is one and all is well. The awakened one does not seek the light anymore, for they have become it, a living embodiment of divine imagination fulfilled.